It's time for the Board, Committee, and Commission Roundup. This week has been a busy one. The Barnstable Economic Development Commission is hoping a new marketing plan will entice entrepreneurs to bring their businesses to Barnstable. The Commission finalized the plan during its meeting this week. Director of Growth Management Joanne Miller-Buntich talked about the next steps for obtaining necessary funding.
How the budget process works is a decision, sort of a request for funds, not capital money, which is what this is, gets put into the budget. There's a form that works for, and then those decisions are made, the council votes, it runs through the process. So it's a good time. Where we left this in terms of process was that we were going to sort of finalize this RFP so that we could go out and just kind of say, how much do you think this would cost to accomplish? So we could get a number, because we can't have a budget ask without some kind of a number. So
it could be an estimate though, right?
Well, that's what it will be when we get it, but there has to be something. So the way I remember the process was you folks were going to help me, or I was going to help you, we were going to help each other, sort of finalize this document so we could then take it, run it around peers and professional consultants and say, if you were going to do this, how much would you charge to do it, which is pretty commonplace.
Buntich will now begin working on obtaining cost estimates so the Commission can present the marketing plan to Town Council for funding. The Cape Cod Oyster Company wants to increase its operation in North Bay and West Bay in Osterville. Al Supernaut and Dave Ryan with the Cape Cod Oyster Company presented plans to the Waterways Commission this week. They say the project will both aid the town's oyster propagation program and remove nitrogen from those bodies of water.
What we're trying to do is we want to keep everything as close to the shore as possible, just to keep it out of everybody's way, essentially.
So in order to grow these extra oysters, the two sites reflect a floating nursery in North Bay, which is that area highlighted in the blue,
right,
adjacent to Al's property.
Yep.
Oysters would be seed oysters would be produced in that floating nursery. Oysters given to the town for their own propagation use at the places that they choose. And then, in addition to that, we would increase our production down in West Bay on that new 10-acre site.
Waterways Committee Chair Jack Mead expressed concerns that a larger shellfish grant in the area could hinder sailing activities.
I know that the 10-acre site is the one I worry about more than the other one.
Right.
I know there's a ton of sailing and everything else that goes on in that area, the understanding is that you don't see that having an issue in any way, shape, or form.
No, because the kids actually do a lot of sailing up on our other grants right here in West Bay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are much, much shallower than that grant.
Okay. Yeah.
The only thing, and I'm a big believer in not seeing anything. The town normally has us put yellow balls on the corners.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I would be very happy if we didn't put any yellow balls on the corner.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't put them, you'd never know they were there.
Right.
The Cape Cod Oyster Company's proposal is still in the initial stages. They will need approval from town, state, and federal officials. The Planning Board postpones a vote on the proposed Hyannis Parking Overlay District. Director of Growth Management Joanne Miller-Buntich talked about the need for the zoning amendment during this week's Planning Board meeting.
As the result of some anomalies that were discovered with these land uses going back many, many decades, some confusion arose about their status. And so the town council created a subcommittee and convened that subcommittee and asked the assistance of staff, myself, Ruth Weil, Richard Scally, Elizabeth Hartsgrove all participated. Other folks who were involved were the building commissioner, the deputy fire chief of Hyannis Fire. And the direction that was taken was to create this ordinance, which overlays existing lots, as was described in the hearing, and create an as-of-right use with some performance standards for those uses.
Hyannis resident Felicia Penn voiced her concerns about the proposal during the public comment period.
Thank you. So what we're discussing here, I have 4 pages. I'd have a little handout, whatever, but we'll get to that. So it's the implementation of a new zoning layer over and above the existing zoning of these areas, apparently to address existing permitting issues. So you're asked to approve this zoning in order to, and I'm quoting from the summary that's in the ordinance, to organize the permitting process in better coordination with licensing. So since the 60s, permits for parking lots were issued directly from the town manager's office, and before that, the Board of Selectmen directly issued them. The message I received from reading the zoning ordinance is that the current system is not able to manage these permits, not able to manage the enforcement and regulatory aspects of these permits, and that there's no clear coordination with licensing. That seems to be the purpose for coming up with a zoning overlay district, because evidently something in the process right now is quote-unquote broken, my words. So there's a sentence in the summary that indicates that this zoning change, quote, more clearly adds this as permitted use for these specific lots. So I wanted to ask staff to please clarify which lots as of this moment are not clearly permitted for parking, or in another way, are there lots designated in the zone that currently do not hold a permit or variance for parking?
Attorney Matt Spillane represented Pleasant Street Realty Trust during the hearing. He asked that his client, also known as Baxter's, be included in the Hyannis Parking Overlay District.
Baxter's Fish and Chips would like to be considered as being part of the parcels being given by right ability to have open air parking. Now you'd probably think, well, why would Baxter's want to have the right to establish a parking lot on this business? And the reason is actually quite simple. Under the bylaws proposed, you'll see that it allows principal use businesses to operate open air lots if, in fact, they have sufficient parking to cover what they need to cover under their parking requirements for customers and employees. In this particular case, the lot that is located on the property that I'm speaking of would actually have about 24 extra spaces beyond what is required to fulfill its duties running a restaurant use. And I guess the question you would probably wonder is, okay, well, why would they want to parcel off 24 spaces and have 24 spaces available for paid parking? And the answer is simple. Right now they have an enforcement problem down there of their own. People come down, they park their cars, and they bolt. They go off, they do other things. And in a day of social media where people can get on Yelp or TripAdvisor and trash a local business fairly easily because a car has been towed, it's just not a problem that the owners want to deal with anymore. I think their thoughts are, if they had a parking meter up there and if somebody wants to come down and pay, well, that's the price of doing business. They can pay and they can be off and do their business.
Ultimately, the Planning Board voted to continue a discussion of the matter to its next meeting, February 8th. The Community Preservation Committee approved funding a project that will restore the old colonial courthouse on Main Street in Barnstable Village. Attorney Joe Berlandi talked about the need for the project before the vote.
This building, as you know, is old. It's one of the oldest buildings in the village, if not the oldest. And in the last few years, we have opened it up to the community. Every year, we reenact the protest that took place in 1774 by the Patriots, which prevented a trial from going forward. And that every year, we have about 300 children from the elementary schools in Barnstable that come and we put on our gowns and our wigs and we actually reenact the trial, which never took place. But the point is, if it did take place, we enact what would have happened. So it's open to the school children. and they all see this wonderful building, and they get a history of what happened at this site. We have opened up this building in the last few years with other nonprofits in the village. We share it with the library when we have our author event every year. We share it with the Barnstable Village Association. We have our meetings there. We share it with the Barnstable Historical Society. We have our meetings there. And the point is, we make it available. Years ago, it was probably very closed, so to speak, and people didn't even know it existed. They know it exists now. And as stewards of this building, we're responsible to make sure that it's maintained. So we're asking you for this funding for Phase 1, which is a total of $170,000, 50% from the Mass Cultural Foundation.
Ultimately, the committee agreed with Berlandi and approved spending $85,000 to renovate the old colonial courthouse. Tales of Cape Cod is hoping the remaining $85,000 cost for Phase 1 would be funded with a Massachusetts Cultural Foundation grant. Town Council will also need to sign off on that funding. The Airport Commission shuts down a proposed solar project at Cape Air. Cape Air officials presented its plans for a solar carport during last week's Airport Commission meeting. Once up and running, the carport could have generated income for both Cape Air and the airport. Despite that, Airport Commission Chair Ron Persutti says he has concerns about the project.
We know how important you are to this airport, and we are trying to accommodate you every time you come forward. And I think you can see the accommodation, or at least I hope you've seen the accommodation from a financial standpoint with your existing lease. Now, 6 members of this board were on that when the lease was negotiated. And tremendous amount of give and take was, I don't know if you were present, Mary, or not, I don't know if you were here, Jim, but there was a lot of give and take, and there was a lot of accommodation for recognizing the worth of Cape Air. I feel the same way today, okay? I would love to accommodate Cape Air. My problem is what you're asking us to do for, not for a small project, a small amount of money, not necessarily to us, but you're asking us to essentially tear up a lease. It's a third of the way through, rewrite it at the same cost as if it had continued on for 20 years. All right? I have a problem with that. That is, in my opinion, precedent setting. Okay? You're in private business. You can do anything. We have some limitations in the public. I think I expressed this at the last meeting. That's my problem. If we can't come to an agreement, I personally can't support it at your request currently, and I will vote no on it.
Cape Air President Linda Markham and Sustainability Initiative Director Jim Wolf attempted to ease commissioners' concerns before the vote.
The word accommodation, I think from our perspective, we take a little bit of offense to that
as
far as accommodation. Because I really see it more as a partnership, and I see it as a long-term partnership, that Cape Air has been part of this community and been part of this airport for over 25 years. And that is a choice that we made to be here. We have invested significant amount of money in our facilities, over $1 million in the fleet hangar, which was just a hangar, and invested a tremendous amount of resources and money. We've recruited all of our employees to this base. We want to be here. We've made that very clear to Bud, and I believe to the commission on numerous occasions. So, with that being said, I'd like Jim, you to speak about the lease and the terms of that.
Well, at the last conversation that we all had, friends, I think the takeaway point, and Katie and Bud, we talked about it was like, what is the commissioner's concern, and what are we dealing with? We're seeing that difference. I think we've addressed it since the last meeting. But the issue of getting stuck with a solar project sitting there when Cape Air is gone, that's what I'm hearing from you, Mike.
Right.
And so, what we basically have addressed is that solar project can become the property of the airport. Unlike a building which is not producing income at that point, if you inherit from somebody who walks or negotiates a nice leasing a building, it's sitting there and it's building. a solar project is earning money. It's still making from the sun.
Despite those arguments, the Airport Commission voted to reject the project. At this point, it's still unclear as to whether Cape Air will attempt to bring the project before the board again. With this week's Board, Committee, and Commission Roundup, I'm Sarah Mantle.